I'm Marlon Rono from the Philippines, from Magsaysay, with global operations. From the Philippines, with global operations in the ASEAN region, China, Eastern Europe, North America, and I'm highly privileged to be invited again today in this forum. It has been a year since I stood before you about the challenges of the crew managers with the advent of the implementation of the MLC. I'm sure many of you knows what is now and what is going to be, but allow me to walk you through what has happened so far. Since then, many things have changed, and the Maritime Labor Convention of 2006 MLC was adopted and entered into force on August 20, 2013. And at that time, 45 countries representing 70% of the world's fleet ratified the convention. As we all know, the convention was established the minimum requirements for the working and living conditions of the seafarer. It has the following components: minimum requirements for seafarers to work on the ship, conditions of employment, accommodation and recreational facilities, food and catering, health protection, medical care, welfare and social protection, compliance and enforcement. At the start of the implementation, many of us faced challenges in complying with it. Today, I'll be updating you on where we are and what were the challenges that we can do in today's era. Today, there are 64 countries that have ratified the convention, representing 80% of the world's fleet and its seafarers. During the initial stages of its implementation, the industry faced many challenges. Seven ships were found to be non-compliant, and a year after, 185 ships were reported to have deficiencies, and some were detained. What are the most common deficiencies? Reports from flag states, Port State Control, Classification Society, non-government organizations. Most common causes of deficiencies are as follows: compliant to standard employment agreement, onboard food hygiene and galley management, health and safety, training and qualification, and onboard compliance procedures, complaint procedures. The most common deficiencies are Seaman's Employment Agreement did not reflect the MLC Part 1. Second, the Sea Employment Agreement is missing on some MLC requirements. No ship owner liability cover could be produced. There is no available contract on board, and the contract is only signed by one party. The next most common deficiency is on board. On board are food hygiene and galley management, and conditions of the galley, conditions of the cold rooms and storerooms, and food hygiene and handling training. In my company, we have recommended to our clients to conduct ship's audit and inspection, and recommend to them the necessary improvements, including proper training of the galley personnel. We also implemented our galley personnel for chief cook and messman to undergo a comprehensive retraining regardless of their previous experience. This will ensure that the standards requirements and their competencies is aligned and exceed with the minimum requirements of the convention. The third most common deficiency found is related to health, safety, Safety and accident prevention. The convention, as we all know, focuses on safety of the ship owners. This takes into account the proper maintenance of the ship and its equipment, as well as the welfare of the seafarers on board. According to the report, the following are the reasons that resulted to deficiency of inspection: no risk assessment for noise and vibration of the chemical handling, incorrect operation of safety committee, poor practices of which no accident investigation being carried out, and risk assessment not being used. It is important to operate a vessel safely, as there are different types of cargoes being handled by various vessels. The fourth common deficiency found is about seafarers' qualification. As I mentioned earlier, the prevention and its provision exposes safe operations of the vessel. It is therefore important to properly maintain the ship, and the crew must be competent to operate it safely. Some of the reasons for deficiencies reported are as follows: STCW originals are not on board, no discharge book, no evidence of all 4 STCW basic training, no evidence of the required tanker training, and no evidence of ECDIS training. Last but not the least, the onboard compliant procedures, part of the requirements of the convention, is to put in place a grievance machinery. As far as the Philippine Standard Employment Contract was amended to align to these requirements of the convention. For some ships that are covered by collective bargaining agreement, a grievance procedure is in place. This must be followed. The crew must be properly oriented of the mechanics and how it should be handled. Some of the most common reasons for deficiencies are lack of awareness by the crew, no flag state contract information, no onboard complaints procedure, and not supplied as stated on the MLC Part 2. In my company, we have established for the crew pre and post joining a feedback mechanism so that any feedback and findings are immediately reported to the owner or manager for appropriate corrective actions. We also recommended to our clients to implement a similar platform while crew are on board. As reported, the most common complaints are timely payment of wages, long working hours with minimal rest, quality of food, duration of employment contracts, and onboard communication system. Timely payment of wages was reported as the top concerns of seafarers. We have learned that some ships were detained by port state authorities, including unions, especially for untimely payment of these wages. Situations like this, when left unchecked, could lead to involvement of third parties and further investigation on the vessels, including contracts, living conditions, treatment of crew, and the maintenance of the ships. Further inspection and legal proceedings could follow, which would cause more to litigation and not considering the damage it could cause to the reputation of the ship owner. While it's understandable for the delayed payment of wages, especially with the current market situation. In reference to the need of the onboard communication, we have launched the Magsaysay Maritime Corporation and the Magsaysay Marino Internet on board ships. These solutions provide affordable and reliable communication for our seafarers, which features services such as voice, SMS, email, and others. This makes it easier for crew to communicate with their families while working on board. Complying with the convention is found to be expensive, especially those who at the time of the implementation were not prepared, and some neglected the importance of its compliance. However, some companies invested resources, put their ships' facilities and equipment in place, upgrading the living conditions, and improvement of the working environment, including the wages. Some of you may have used external consultants to conduct audits and inspections of your ships to help you comply with the prescribed standards. However, for those who took the convention for granted and left the deficiencies on their ships unchecked, had to deal with the high cost of noncompliance that could lead to their ships being detained. I would like to bring to your kind attention that one of the recent most cases, the Australian Maritime Safety Authority, AMSA, banned a ship from entering any Australian port after 3 repeated detainments since last year. Violations included improper payment of wages, inadequate living and working conditions, and inadequate maintenance of the vessel and its equipment. This can lead to banning the vessel and would be costly and make your ship less desirable and less competitive in the marketplace. Thank you so much, and good day.